everyone, for joining in today. We're going to be discussing maximizing profitability, how brick-and-mortar retailers can successfully adopt e-commerce. This is actually a timely topic, given the past 6 months after the pandemic and after the boom of 2021. But before we get into all of the content here, I did want to run through a couple of housekeeping issues. The first of all, this is an open panel discussion, so we want the audience to ask us questions as well after we're done discussing our own topics. So please, right down there in the bottom, use the Q&A button and ask us questions that relate to any of the topics that we discuss. Feel free, and we're happy to put those to the panel towards the end there. So who is Management One? If you're not familiar with us, thank you for joining in. Our main purpose is to provide financial security for our people, our clients, and our affiliates. And we do that through a focus on merchandise intelligence and educational sessions like these for independent retailers. We operate under a set of core values, being a generous heart, courage, curiosity, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration, like these events here. And we're always happy to partner with our friends in the technology age, and that absolutely includes Runit. So I want to turn it over to Mr. Daniel Solomons to introduce himself.
Thank you, Nico. Welcome to all our guests today, both current Runit merchants and Management One guests. I'm Daniel Solomons, CEO of Runit Systems, coming to you today from the Garment District in New York City. We see a great deal of frustration out there surrounding the question of digital commerce. Should I do it? Must I do it? What does it look like? In my case, does a digital presence always mean selling online? And how can I do all this profitably? Today's webinar is about helping us all think through these very important questions. We're proud to be co-hosting this with Management One today. Allow me to share just a little context for those who may be unfamiliar with Runit. Runit Systems is a cloud POS and inventory management system specifically focused on the needs of clothing, shoe, sports, and gift retailers who tend to be sophisticated and very client service oriented. Our reason for existing is to help our retailers to gain more control of their business and increase profitability through streamlined operations, real-time, reliable data, and strong APIs that let you connect our system to other best-in-breed systems that you also wish to use. For those who are unfamiliar, Management One's retail experts plan over $3 billion of independent retail business annually. We've been connected at Runit to Management One for over 20 years. Their retail experts work closely with many current Runit merchants, both daily, weekly, monthly, building accurate, actionable buying plans with the strength of their proprietary retail orbit technology standing behind them. And through our APIs, Management One is able to automatically pull all the data they need from Runit to perform their analysis and build their plans without any manual intervention required from you. Just a brief word about our esteemed guest panelists today that have so kindly shared their time with us. Jordan Edwards is a partner at the Chart Organization, a family-owned investment management and holding company. Jordan oversees day-to-day operations and acquisitions, and he works very closely with over 400 national retailers and local businesses around the US. Jordan also serves as the CEO of Mixology Clothing Company, which is based here in the New York area, which has been growing in the Runit cloud since 2010 and has been relying upon Management One's planning services since 2013. Jordan is responsible for setting the overall company strategy and overseeing retail, e-commerce, and their brand portfolio operations. Mixology has 15 locations. They have their shopmixology.com website. They have 300 employees, and they have over 250,000 active customers. Our other special guest today is Adam Hannon from Commerce 12, his e-commerce management company. Last year, a Runit merchant called me and said it would be very, very unfair of us to keep Adam a secret. And a growing number of Runit merchants now rely upon Adam's team daily to set up, manage, and optimize their Shopify websites and their customer targeting. So Adam has a great deal to share with us about the question that we have today. Prior to Commerce 12, a serial entrepreneur, Adam founded and served as CEO of several multi-million-dollar startups in fashion and e-commerce. We're very grateful to Jordan and Adam for carving out some time today to share their wisdom. Hopefully you all have questions as well. And I'm going to turn the mic now back to Nico and Dane from Management One, who are in the driver's seat today. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So before I kick it over to the panel questions here, I did want to set the stage a little bit on exactly what it is that we're discussing today. So when you talk about e-commerce adoption, it's no surprise that those businesses that adapted to the digital shift, it was pretty imperative during 2020, but those that were able to adapt more effectively in 2021, not only did they stay alive, but they were able to bounce back quicker. We saw that across the board in a lot of our clients. And there's now almost on the flip side of the coin with the consumers, there's this baseline set of expectations. And if you don't have at least a minimum digital presence, it can be viewed negatively. And there's a negative consumer perception that you want to avoid as a retail business owner. So the question that we posed actually in a webinar that we did last month was, are you ahead of the curve or behind the curve? And today we're going to talk about, if you do take the plunge, how do you do that profitably? So let's talk about a little bit about the brand itself. For those folks that are deeply entrenched in brick and mortar, a long time before e-com even got started, your brick and mortar store was at the center of this universe. That was everything that you needed to connect to your audience. But we live in a different world now, especially after the pandemic. And your brick and mortar store really exists as just another satellite. It's another channel to connect with your audience. And that includes social media, advertising, email messaging, and e-com. And you need to figure out how to coexist with all of these other channels, again, profitably. And when we're talking about e-commerce, sure, your website is first and foremost, but that could also mean social selling, live stream selling, perhaps, maybe third-party marketplaces, the eBays, the Facebook marketplaces, the local next door marketplaces of the world. But today we're going to mainly concentrate on the website itself. And on the flip side of that coin, when you're looking at your brick and mortar store, how are you incorporating digital strategies back into the store so that you're linking those two properties and making the experience much more seamless for the customer? There's also a baseline expectation now for consumers that really expect to see digital across the board. And we'll get into what we mean by that. So what has stopped a lot of the retailers now that are purely brick and mortar? Obviously, there's a steep learning curve. When you look at the slide that I just put up a little bit ago, those are a lot of channels. It can be daunting when you look at everything all at once and you think, how am I going to incorporate all of this into my business? I have 5 employees. We can't possibly take all of this on. There's just too many. Maybe you have a lack of resources to maintain all of these digital channels. And the biggest one, I think, is just the uncertainty of the ROI that you're going to get out of it. So those are all things that you have to factor in when you're looking to take the digital plunge in your business. And a few pros and cons, and I think I can push this one to Adam in our first question on the next slide. There's the easy myth out there that a lot of people think, oh, well, e-commerce, at least I don't have to pay rent, so it's got to be a lot cheaper. That one's a definite myth. So you need to understand that there are going to be expenses that you incur with e-commerce. We can get into the whole list of them, but the fact that it's going to be cheaper than brick and mortar is simply not true. So you need to factor that into your business model. The good thing is you will hit a much wider audience. That one is for sure. But with a wider audience comes more marketing resources, advertising, messaging, content, organic. All of those things need to be taken into account too. And it's not just monetary. There's a heavy time resource involved as well. some folks like to think that for e-com, I'm no longer constrained to the 2,000 square feet in my brick and mortar. So I can just have thousands of SKUs. It'll be great. But you also have to factor in that inventory needs to be purchased. It needs to be stored. It needs to be managed, shipped. And you have to really consider that as well if you're going to be jumping into online. All of those things need to be factored in before you take this plunge here. So let's get right to the questions. I know, I think Jordan would be best served to answer this first one here because you've actually done it. You've done it quite successfully. So how exactly, when you first got into e-com, how did you define the right digital business strategy? What were the things that you were looking to accomplish, and how did you adjust your business model?
Thank you so much. So, the genesis of our business started out as a single brick and mortar location on Long Island in New York. That was around late 2009. And e-commerce was already rocking and rolling at that point. I mean, it wasn't like people weren't buying things online. All of my background is in commercial real estate investment, shopping centers and office buildings, apartment buildings. And so when we made the very small investment in the first mixology, we being my family, my father, my sister, and I, when we were sitting around the dinner table, we said to ourselves, if we're going to be in the fashion business, how can we not have a website? That was in 2011. And it wasn't my first web business that I had built, but my first web business was a complete and utter failure because it took me a year and a half to try to build it. Sunk a tremendous amount of dollars into it and ultimately walked away with nothing except experience. I call that tuition. And with that tuition payment, my former business partner at the time said, hey, you built a website for that ink and toner business. You think you could do it for mixology? We had 3 stores. And I said, well, I didn't really build it, but I know quite a bit about it now. And a little company called Shopify had just emerged. It was a startup business. They had about 50 employees and a few thousand customers. When I called them in the early days, they had less than 50 employees. And if I needed something answered, they just ran to the other side of the office to get it. I think most of us know now that Shopify is a multi-billion-dollar brand. At one time, their market cap was 160 billion. I think it's at like 60 or 70 billion today. And that was the question that we asked ourselves. Outside of any strategy, we said, what does the customer want? What does the average customer want? Does our average customer shop online? And the answer in 2011 and 2008 and 2009 was yes. And so we went on the journey of beginning to build that website. I should let you know that my first web business, Toner Central, took me a year and a half. I never got it live, but with Shopify, I got Shop Mixology up in 6 weeks. My brother and I, he was interning for me that summer from GW. And 6 weeks later, we were selling things online. And I don't have to tell you what happened, but all the learning that we figured out how to run the business, by the time COVID hit, we weren't just a fashion business that had stores and e-commerce, but we were a fully integrated omnichannel business with Management One and Runit being incredible key cornerstones in that business and big parts of our technology stack.
And that's a good point too, because the barrier of entry has gotten a lot shorter. I think, Adam, you can probably speak to that. People aren't having to code their sites in HTML anymore.
Yeah, so I actually launched my first website in 1999. So I hate to date myself here, but that's the reality. In 2005, I started my second company, which was based on a proprietary technical platform for e-commerce that I had developed, which not dissimilar to Jordan, other than the fact that we did get it live, was a significant lift and obviously extremely expensive. Fast forward to about 2015, Shopify actually contributed to one of the, I wouldn't say the only, but was a significant thorn in my side as it relates to my tech stack from a pricing perspective and ease of use perspective, and literally transitioned my business almost overnight to move my tech stack off of my proprietary platform, which was extraordinarily expensive to maintain, to Shopify, which, when you can launch a website, for $79 a month on a pretty robust platform, especially as it relates to e-commerce needs, was really revolutionary at the time. They've continued to upgrade, update, and really be best in class, in my opinion, for any direct-to-consumer initiative. So yeah, I run a network of about 80 sites, every single one of which is running on Shopify. So it's a very impressive platform. It's scalable, it's affordable, and it's absolutely the most recommended platform that I would use, at least at this point.
So for a client that's coming to you and they have no website, they're coming to you from the retail space, just saying, what do I need to consider before I get started? What advice would you give them? What questions should they ask themselves before they jump into this?
So I think, like, back in the day, when you would have a proprietary platform, or there were platforms not like Shopify, you'd get these tech companies, and whether they did it purposely or not, you would get stuck because they had all this enterprise knowledge about how your website worked. With Shopify, it's what's called open source technology, which means you can log in from anywhere. Anybody can really run these websites for you on Shopify. Of course, they may not be as good as Jordan. They may not be as good as myself. But ultimately, you can run your own storefront on Shopify. So, at the end of the day, like, my whole theory with building websites for any of our partners is just keep it simple, right? Like, you don't need all the bells and whistles to start. Shopify gives you a tremendous leg up. It's very easy, as Jordan described, to get a site up and running. And, try not to customize anything until you really need it, right? Like, let's prove concept. Let's not put a ton of money into it up front. Let's put our money into, like, the stability of not only the site, but your marketing plan to start driving traffic and actually doing business. And then you can always reinvest with a platform such as this.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that you have to have every single product under the sun in your store up online. Some of our clients, they do a lot of custom tailoring, especially in luxury menswear, and they want to use that site to just push traffic to the store. That's another strategy too.
Yeah, you don't need necessarily, if you're a one-store operator and you don't necessarily have the depth and breadth of inventory, it can sometimes be cost prohibitive just from a photography perspective to get that product up online, right? So, you buy for, and I've been in retail my whole life, so I do have a retail background. So if you're buying for a store predominantly in women's fashion, you may be buying 1, 2, 2, 1, 1 extra small, 2 small, 2 medium, 1 large. All of a sudden, by the time you take a picture, you post a product, to get it up online, you've already sold out of your 2 mediums and 1 extra small. So the experience when someone comes to the site, it's not as appealing. And, based on today's society and short attention spans, if you go to 3 or 4 products and you're experiencing the same thing, your innate reaction is just to leave and find somebody else, right? So, you need to think from an inventory perspective that, and I agree with what you're saying, Nico. It's not all means, you don't need to have everything, but you really should try to focus on items that are replenishable, items that you have some depth in, and clearly items that you have margin in. Because all these things, going back to your initial slide about cost, you should think about an e-commerce store with the exact same cost structure as a retail store. So, yeah, you don't have rent for e-com, but you have so many other expenses. So if you want to really think about it logically, you want to think about depth and breadth of inventory, and you want to think about the expense structure very similarly to having your own retail outlet. It's basically another store.
Yeah, and Adam, I just want to pick up on something you said and maybe throw it back to Jordan. But from an inventory perspective, one of the things that we preach is, in this new world where there are so many channels now, that the customer is coming in through, a wide and thin assortment strategy is really going to get you nowhere. So, Jordan, was there a moment, you kind of talk about that journey from 2009, 2010 up until, the pandemic that kind of brought you to a place. Was there a tipping point? Was there a moment when, it sounds like technology and e-commerce was something you wanted integrated from the beginning, but was there a tipping point where you kind of said, wow, we have something here that's a standalone business on itself?
Yes, to the first part of your question, and no to the second part of your question. So to the first part of your question, as it relates to the tipping point, we in the very early days, our e-commerce business was kind of like a standalone business or a standalone store. It was a small volume door. We grew it. It had its own inventory. It had its own identity. And it had meager performance in the early years. The tipping point for us came around 2017 to 2018, when we started to harmonize all of that data and understand who was shopping both online and in store. And so as systems like Runit and Management One became to have even better connectivity across the board, we harmonized the data of who was shopping both online and in store. And we found that our omni-channel customers were incredibly more profitable on a lifetime value basis than our average customer. So for example, my average online customer, and I'm just rounding here, would be worth around $100 over their lifetime. They came to us, they shopped one time, and then they maybe never came back. They were coming from all over the country. And as a matter of fact, all over the world. We were shipping to 50 states and 20 countries. My average in-store customer at the time was worth about $400 on average over their lifetime. What we found out once we harmonized all of this data was that our average omni-channel customer was worth around $2,000. So they were a 20x over the online only and more than 4x over the in-store only. And so I said, anybody that's competing with me who's exclusively running an e-commerce business, I mean, as we said, it's pretty easy to start up a website these days, but the margins are razor thin. Starting a store, in my opinion, is a little bit more difficult because you got to go get a lease, you got to build it out, you got to hire people. And so for that, you're rewarded slightly more to the tune of 4 times where the lifetime value, and you can still run profitable stores. But people who are operating in an omni-channel fashion are operating so at 20 times more profitability. So today we're up to about 300,000 active customers. 17,000 of those who are our best customers are omni-channel, and they're shopping online in store. So my whole entire job as a CEO has been to figure out, how do I get more omni-channel customers? A lot of times when I speak to smaller retailers, like, I don't even know how I could do that. And I think it's slightly easier. It's just about maybe reprioritizing your focus to saying, my customer they don't like to shop online. I think in 2022, as we approach 2023, that's somewhere in the ballpark of high 90% of our population is shopping online on a daily basis. That's why Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world. That's why companies like Target and Walmart are investing billions into it. So that was my tipping point, Dean. It was when I said, where is my customer want to be? Not what am I comfortable with? You know, if it wasn't for listen, I know very little about fashion still, 15 years into this business almost. If it wasn't for my sister, we'd probably be out of business. The things that I was really good at was taking risk, investing, hiring teams, finding Daniel, finding Management One. There was a pivotal point in my business after Hurricane Sandy, which is when we brought on Management One. The company was almost out of business. And I found Margot Kopman, who's our inventory planner with Management One, and someone who's like my family now. And so that kind of goes to answer your second question, Dane, of which I said no, because the web I don't look at it as one business and the other business anymore. It's just one area where my customer wants to be. And if they want to shop on Instagram, we're there. If they want to shop on TikTok, we're there. If they want to shop on Facebook, we're there. And I think that the tools are actually pretty easy. If you can download an app on your phone, then you can set these tools up. Like, they're not that difficult anymore. It's just not that difficult. It's as easy as downloading an app inside of Shopify and syndicating your products out to this network. And I'm very fortunate to be on Runit, and listen, Shopify has serious limitations as it relates to physical brick and mortar retail. But every single place that Shopify has fallen short, Runit was our champion. Every time I called up Daniel, and I put a lot of pressure on Daniel over the past 13 or so years, and I said, we need this, we need this, we need this. And it wasn't like, okay, let me build it. It was already there. Like, they've known the business so well. So things that we needed in the e-commerce space, like safety stock and allocating tools and markdown tools that do not exist even in this day on Shopify, we had in our technology stack because of Runit. So I hope that answers your question, Dean.
Well, it's actually a really good point, and I appreciate you guys. Sorry for the connection issue there. It's a good point when you bring up that, what did you say, 90%? You're thinking roughly in a couple of years, people are going to be online. Right now, I think we put this out in our last webinar, Dane, 87% of the product journey, 87% of shoppers start their product journey online before they go in store. And that goes back to our discussion on what's the baseline thing that you need on e-com. You at least need to let people know that you're there and your products are there. If you don't have the capacity to sell them on your digital space, at least let them know locally where they can find it. But you bring up a good point. I wanted to answer one of our panelists' questions, simple one. What is an omnichannel customer? And it's basically a customer that shops from your brand in store, on your website. You know for a fact that they have pulled products from each of these locations. And the key to your store is, how do you convert customers that have only shopped on one channel across multiple channels? And that's really what we're talking about with the slide here. And that's on both sides of the coin. For products, do you want to have one-to-one mirroring? Do you want to have maybe some products that are e-com only to entice them to go to the website? Jordan, I'm curious, what do you guys, if you at all, do you have anything in store right now in the brick and mortar store that ties people back to the website, whether it's a QR code or a digital iPad at a display? Is there anything that ties people back into the website?
There's nothing like that in the store right now. 100% of our goods are RFID tags, so we do have the capability to see 100% inventory accuracy and visibility across the whole company. And all of my stores are connected to my website in the sense that you can go and pre-shop to see if that item is in the store. But we don't have anything where you can click it and then, instantaneously be transferred to the site via the product.
Gotcha.
Nico, I just wanted to jump in because I think that that was a really interesting question that was thrown out. And, I remember when I started, in the fashion business back in the aughts, the concept of omnichannel was kind of like what the metaverse is now. People talked about it, but no one really knew fully what it was. So, I would kind of throw this to Daniel or Adam, what is the concept of omnichannel look like in 2022 and beyond?
Daniel, I'll let you take that one.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Adam. The mandate that we are being given by our retailers is to be able to, as Jordan said, to be customer centric, to be able to meet the customer wherever they are, and to even though in our universe, we are e-commerce platform agnostic. So we don't have our own e-commerce platform. We speak to Shopify, we speak to BigCommerce, we speak to, sorry, Adam, we speak to Magento, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and WooCommerce. So we're, I suppose in that way, we're also trying to be very flexible as far as allowing a retailer to determine, which of those platforms is going to best assist them with their journey and what they're trying to do. But as the system of record for inventory, as the Bible for the retailer, we see it as our mandate to ensure that wherever the customer begins their interaction with you, that they have a great experience, they have a seamless experience, they're able to understand what they can expect from you, what you have available, and that we make it as again, as seamless for you to be able to deliver that to them. So we have some merchants who are really pushing the envelope. I think the way Jordan is, in terms of really, committing to wherever you are, we're gonna meet you there. We have others who, and I think Adam alluded to this before. We have others who are looking more at using the web to drive people into the store. So still more brick and mortar focused, but using the website as a way of, helping people understand what they can expect from your store, which I actually was going to ask Adam to talk about, because Adam, I know you've said some very, I I think, wise things in the past about, if you feel like maybe selling online is not your thing, it's not the right thing for you, it doesn't mean there's nothing you can do online, right? You've said some things that I think could be very helpful to some of our audience who may feel that perhaps selling online isn't the right thing for them, but not having a website also is not necessarily the right thing, Adam. And I know you assist merchants with driving people into the stores as well.
Yeah, so there's more to a digital footprint strategy than an actual e-commerce storefront, right? An e-commerce storefront can be slightly prohibitive in some ways that I've brushed upon. Obviously, we could talk about it in greater detail, but ultimately, customers need to be communicated to. And building a customer database, either at the PO, at your point of sale level through Runit or whoever you're using, ultimately, you need to build that list and you need to utilize that list to reach out to your customers. So I have Runit customers that we've just designed email and SMS programs for, that we communicate directly with the store owners that say, these are the new items that we want to highlight. We put together very elevated creative, which is the most important thing for me, is to always elevate and look professional, not that expensive, especially if it's done the right way. And have a strategy in which you either can do it yourself or partner with a company such as mine to reach out to customers once, twice a week, send them an email, tell them what's new in stock, tell them what's on sale, tell them what's going on in your store, and leverage text messaging as well. And there's always, like, every time I talk to somebody new into this game, they're like, well, we don't want to upset people. We don't want to bombard them with emails. We don't want to bombard them with text. And, I'm sensitive to that and I understand that thought process. But especially with email, like, you're either interested or you're not interested, right? And if you don't want to pay attention, you delete it. And if you really don't want to pay attention, then you unsubscribe. But the flip side of that coin is that you will drive traffic to your stores. You will increase your sales. A text message, I have a little more personal sensitivity to. So maybe it's once a month, maybe it's twice a month. But again, you always have clear opt-out language to say stop sending. And if you don't hit stop and you want to keep receiving, they may not act on every email or on every text they get, but it's going to continue to drive awareness for you and your company and your brand, and it will continue to drive traffic. So the cost basis of running a program like that is certainly much lower than the expense structure that comes with a full-blown e-commerce storefront. But in some ways can be maybe not as effective, but certainly can be very impactful to your retail business for sure.
Yeah, and staying top of mind is huge. I mean, the currency these days is attention. And how can you maintain that attention from your customers?
I think
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's also like out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yep.
You got to keep yourself relevant, and you sharing that you're constantly bringing in new product, or you constantly have things going on in your retail footprint, needs to be communicated, and that is a part of the digital strategy with e-com or without.
Nico, sorry, if I can just add one other item that is, I think, reasonably simple for people to implement in the under the heading of omnichannel, and maybe not as overwhelming as the idea of a full-on e-commerce storefront with all of your inventory online, is just taking advantage of the Google Shopping feed. This is something that we've been talking with merchants about, that actually can do a lot for foot traffic. I think all of us can relate to the idea of needing something in a pinch and going into Google and searching for an item by the SKU or by the description, and realizing that it's actually in stock in a store that's 5 minutes from where we live. And it might be a store that we never shopped at before, and we wouldn't have thought of going there. But that's a very simple expression of, I think, omnichannel, as far as how can you take this data, right, of what you have in stock in your store right now and bring it alive, make it work for you in a way that you're not just relying on people to walk in the store and discover it, but you can let them discover it on another channel online, and realize that you are their solution. And this is something that is very easy to do these days. And yet it's something that many people are not doing. I'm often surprised by when I do a search and I imagine that something I'm looking for probably is in stock in a store near me, but they're not showing up there because they're not doing it. So that's, I think, one idea that is reasonably simple to do that can take someone a step toward sort of leveraging their in-store inventory, more powerfully. But it's still not necessarily the full. It's more about driving people, more into the store.
Daniel,
glad
if I
you
could
mentioned
build
that.
on that for 1 second. An incredibly simple yet sometimes difficult e-commerce strategy on the Google front is simply making sure that all of your information is updated and accurate, and that if somebody goes to call you or email you, that it's answered. And that might seem so simple, but it's incredible how often small businesses miss that. And that might be one of the best e-commerce strategies that we have. We're working on some really advanced functionality around that, so that when people do interact with us on Google, we don't miss anything. It's fed right to our Slack platform, for example. And so that is a very good that's a very good omni-channel strategy. If you don't want to have a full e-commerce operation where you're selling on your site, just making sure that you're staying on top of your Google workspace on a weekly basis and updating it with store hours and company announcements, events. That's a really good omni-channel strategy.
Yeah, that's where I was actually going to take that one, Jordan, is the Google My Business profile is free. I mean, you're talking about a resource that's available to everybody. The thing that gets me is when I go to a website and I see contact us or visit our location, and all they've listed is the literal text address, and that's it. And it's so simple to just connect your store to that Google My Business profile. If somebody's looking on a phone, they can click right there. They get directions, they get reviews, they get photos of the store, they get new products. It's almost like a mini website within a website that's completely connected to Google. And it's something that anybody can do and should do for free. Same thing with Google Analytics, a free tool in the back end of your website to just see which pages are the most popular. Where are you getting your traffic from? It starts helping you make decisions about how your site is organized and what content you're putting out there. Same thing that Adam said with email. People are voting with their intentions. If they're unsubscribing, that's a vote to not want to see what your brand is saying. It's if your unsubscribe rate is starting to increase and your open rates are decreasing, it's a red flag that you need to take action. Maybe post less frequently, maybe change up what you're saying. Follow that data, follow what they're telling you. It's the same thing that we see with inventory. Dan, I kind of glossed over this slide, but when you're looking at inventory planning, people are voting with their wallets. They're seeing products move in and out. And that's actually what we do here at Management One. But when you start syncing up e-com with the brick and mortar, Dane, you have an excellent point in the presentations that you give. Even if you're a one location store, you're actually a multi-location store because you have these products all over the place and you need to manage them effectively. Can you speak a little bit more about how our clients look at the various ways that the products move in store versus e-com?
Right. Well, I think, we kind of alluded to it before. And Adam, I think you kind of hit it on the head when you're talking about buying from the perspective of, you're buying a size runner, you're buying a one pack, right, of something, and now you have a digital business and a brick and mortar business, and you're putting photography behind this. You can't buy without a little bit of without some meat behind your buy now, because it's just going to be gone, right? And the last thing that you want is a customer to come to your website and see that you're sold out of something or that there's just not availability. So I think really planning your e-commerce business and really having a strategy to how you're going to buy, and not just your e-commerce business, but how you're going to buy holistically. And so Jordan, I think that I'm going to throw this one to you because you have the practical experience here. How has planning, you joined Runit in 2010, Management One in 2013, how has that journey on planning kind of transformed or really guided the growth of your e-commerce business?
Everything that I do in the business is driven by math and science. My sister and I make a really good partnership in that way. When I hired Management One, it spoke my language. I was able to break down the business by classification and dig into the data. I've never fallen in love with any inventory. Some small businesses and boutiques and people that I've coached, and even inside of mixology, some of our boardroom discussions would be around the question that you just brought up. This might ruffle some feathers with some of the people listening in on here, but sometimes it's a hard truth. What I told my buyers over the years was, if you don't have enough conviction that we could take a picture of it, do you really think we should be buying it? Buying is a lot like investing, where you can only make so many investment decisions. You have to, at some point, you can't buy everything. You can't be so shallow and I want to try this and I want to try this. So what I try to coach the team is, let's use the data. Let's look at Management One. Let's look at the demand that's being driven by classifications, and let's try to make fewer decisions and commit to things. And that takes care of that problem of being so shallow. Because even if you buy something that you love and you can only get a single pack, now it's gone and you can't replicate that. And so as we scaled mixology, the things that we tried to do were find things and areas and classifications within the business that were scalable, where we could go sell thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And now it's very, very hard to go find those hero products, especially for boutique businesses. And I still consider us a chain of boutiques, even though we have 15 stores. That's still a daily conversation that I have with the buying team as they want to, and I tell them controversially, and this is what might ruffle some feathers, that they limp into decisions. I want them to have conviction and say, if you're buying this thing, I want you to go buy 300 of these. That's a small buy for me. I don't want to see a 60 unit buy. Occasionally they fall in love with some fashion item and they are only able to get 60. They're only able to get 50. They buy it and they say, this is the salt. You can't take the salt out of the dish. And so this is kind of the healthy debate that we have that goes back and forth in our boardroom and in the conversations that my sister and I and the rest of my buying team has. But at the heart of it, it's always data. At the heart of it, it always goes back to, are we making a decision that is going to be good for the business in the long run? And can we prove it with the math and science?
Yeah, and I think that's so important. There's two elements of the fashion business. There's the artistry and the passion behind the product, and then you actually, at the end of the day, have to see where the customers have voted with their wallet and what they're telling you with their wallet, and that is where you're really able to analyze the sales figures and the data so that you can plan your business effectively, and taking some of that emotion out of it, because buying could be a very emotional process. We hear a lot of times, like, I can't put this item on markdown because I just love it so much. I can't believe it's not selling. Well, let's just look at the hard data behind it. And sometimes we see things sit on the floor just because there's that kind of like emotional attachment to it. And I would assume that's something that you would not let happen in your
Well,
business.
it's not that I let it happen or don't let it happen. It happens. And I don't want anybody to get the impression. This was the conversation I was having when we had one store, when we had 3 stores, when we had 5 stores. It's not like, oh, you're so big now, you can go buy 300 units. I can't do. No, when we could only buy 5 or 6 packs and they would buy a pack, I would have the same exact conversation. And I'd say, let's call Margot. That's my inventory planner. Let's pull out the reporting. Let's look at the demand for this classification and let's commit to it. And if we want to buy this unit, let's buy enough of it that we actually, if it works, we sell it. And I think that you can't be so scared to make a mistake that you just spread your resources too thin and spread your dollars around too many styles. I was mentoring a small business. She happened to be an e-commerce business recently, and I walked into her warehouse. Her whole e-commerce business was doing about the volume of one of my smallest stores. And I said, you have more styles in this warehouse than I have in my whole company, not physical units, but actual styles. And she wanted to defend all of her buying decisions because she loved every piece of jewelry. She loved every skirt. She loved every dress. And my biggest advice to her was, well, A, I connected her with Margot and said, you should go hire Margot. And then B, I told her, you need to limit your assortment and you need to have conviction in your buys.
Yeah, conviction. I think that's the word I was grasping for earlier, and I think that's such a important takeaway from this discussion. Really being able to buy with conviction,
and just having your eyes on the data, because I'm sure once you start seeing the velocity of some of the products moving in and out, you might even notice that, hey, this did not do well in store. It's actually blowing up online though, and you start allocating more attention on your online properties to that particular product. But it's the paying attention to the data part that is most important.
The interplay between how we use Management One and how we use Runit is exactly that. I mentioned it before, but the allocation tools inside of Runit do not exist inside of Shopify. And so when we are seeing velocity across one store or the other, or on the web, we're easily able to make those decisions and then allocate it out across the whole company and get it to the place where it needs to, needs to be in order to sell.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference between responding to your business versus reacting to the business.
Yep.
Nico, if I can I, Dane, I'm sorry, can I raise a quick question?
Please.
That I'd like, since we have Jordan, something that I've heard from a lot of our retailers that I think is a little bit of an elephant in the room that we should talk about, which is, someone might say, or they do say, okay, I get it. Like, I see the opportunity. I could see the potential. I appreciate everything you're saying, but this is just an enormous, logistically, this is just very challenging for us as a business. And I'm talking about the meat and potatoes of the actual, the maintenance of sites, the fulfillment of orders, right? So let's say you get it. You get what you should order, you get what should be on the site, you get how to do the marketing and all that kind of thing. And you can even generate the orders, but the amount of work involved. We've seen merchants who, they have things in a warehouse, let's say, like we say to them, leverage your stores. We have the technology now so that you can sell from the stores, you can fulfill from the stores, so that you're not moving stuff around all the time. And yet we still see merchants who have a warehouse, let's say, or a central place, and they'll get orders and it will sometimes take days for them to move. They'll go grab things from the stores, and move it to the central place and then ship from there. And that's now added 3 days to the time the customer is going to receive the order, which is not a good experience, right? So we have people who say, I'm not Amazon, I'm not Zappos, I'm not this, I can't deliver this experience. With the in-store employees, I don't want my in-store employees focusing on fulfilling web orders. And Jordan, you talked before about, leveraging technology to sort of make things easier, right? So I was wondering if you could address that, because that's a different topic than the part what we've been talking about up until now.
Absolutely. So, I started this conversation off by saying my first web business was a complete and utter failure, and I spent 1.5 years coding it. And I didn't mean to be cavalier when I said that now it's easy, only to the fact that you can go on Shopify and 100% of that work is done for you. Every single business unit is now appified, where if you want to have email, there's Klaviyo. If you want to have text, there's Attentive. If you want to have shipping, there's 100 options. And so that's the only part I meant by it being easy. In 2015, our web business grew by 250% in 1 year. In 2014, we had like a 98% fulfillment rate. In 2015, we had a 50% fulfillment rate. So exactly what you're saying, Daniel. The fact is that when you're scaling a business, it's going to get messy. And one of the things that I often tell my team is you can't be afraid to piss people off. The customer expects something from you, and they expect the best possible service that they can get, and they want to be where they want to be, not where you want to be. And so all of my time and attention has been spent focused on how do I meet the customer with what they want. That's in the store too. I hate when I walk into a store and the first thing I see is no coffee, no dogs, no this, no that. What they're telling me is, no, we don't want you in our store. at my stores, we say the bathroom is an oasis for the customer. And we go out of our way to make sure the bathroom is an oasis. And my dad and I have a joke. We say it doesn't start in the boardroom, it starts in the bathroom. And so the thing that I try to, everyone on this call mostly are entrepreneurs. At some point you had to take that risk. And I think that if e-commerce isn't something that you set out to do at the very, very beginning, there are people who can help you with that e-commerce. I'm pretty sure that's what Adam does. I never met Adam before a day or two ago, but so what I always say in my business, first of all, like I said, I know now I'm 15 years in, so it's a different story, but I know nothing about this business other than go find people who know about inventory planning, about point of sale, about shipping. And so any limitation that I've had in my business, I went and found somebody who was great. And in some cases, a business story I often tell, I had 12 bookkeepers in 3 years on my way to my current now CFO. He started as the controller. Those 12 bookkeepers over those 3 years, things were messy. Things were hairy. I have had many e-commerce marketing companies. I've had many developers. My whole entire success is built on just a series of one failure and mistake leading to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And the only difference is that I just didn't give up. And I am not that great at e-commerce or fashion, but I'm just really good at, I guess, taking a little bit of risk and saying, okay, that's what the customer wants. It's not what I want. It's what I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, 100% that they want to shop online. And I'm going to do my best to give them that experience. And then finding the tools to do it.
Yeah. And, Jordan, I'm going to give you a little plug. You and your family just had a beautiful spread in Hampton's Magazine, I believe it was. But really, one of the things that stood out about that article is just how you have embraced technology. And I think that in retail and fashion, it's something that a lot of people sometimes fear. But I think you said it best at the beginning. If you could download an app, there's a lot that you can do for your business. So I think just embracing the reality that technology is going to drive this industry forward. So, hop on the bandwagon now, because the train ain't slowing down.
So the final thing I wanted to ask before we take a couple of questions here from the audience, all of those things sound nice when you talk about inventory management, you talk about adding different apps and incorporating all of this technology, but all of that costs money. So how can businesses manage their cash to invest in some of these new things? And I guess, Dane, I'll probably pose this one to you, because that's one of the main things that we do for our clients when they ask us, well, how am I supposed to afford that?
Yeah, and Nico, I'm not sure if this will be sent out, but I really do implore everyone to kind of go check out some of the tools that we offer that are just open and available and free to any retailer who wants to take advantage of them. And that is one, our 12-week cash flow tool. And I can't tell you how much of a game changer this could be for a small business, really looking at your cash flow and narrowing it down to that 12-week field of view. I think that a lot of retailers get stuck in the weeds of looking at their profit margin over a year, and that's great from an accounting standpoint, but that's not going to get you very far with really understanding how far your cash is going to get you in the next buying cycle, in the next quarter. So really narrowing that field of view down and using tools that can help you. So I think that cash flow tool is an incredible offering, and you can find that on our website. Or Nico, I'm not sure if you were planning on sending it out. And then also, the break-even analysis tool that
that's the biggest one, yeah.
Provide retailers as well, and really having an understanding of what are my expenses in this business, because I think sometimes we're running so fast we don't stop to really take a look at where we're at. How are our operating expenses comparing to industry benchmarks? What do I need to achieve over the next 12 months in order to be a profitable business? So I think these are just some great tools that we offer. And I'm sure that, this is something on a larger scale that, Jordan and businesses that are on planning with us are looking at from a, interwoven into their planning, but, just from a, getting started, that cash flow tool and that break-even analysis, I would implore everyone to at least go check that out.
Can I leave a comment on that too? I think that this is a really important business philosophy, just how I think about these things, especially in the early years of mixology. Management One was my first big decision in the business, but every single time I've had to think about making a hire where the person was too expensive for the company, bring in a piece of technology that I didn't think I could afford, instead of taking a look at my budget or what was in my bank account and saying, I can't afford this, I would say the same thing I said about the customer. What is at risk if I don't do this? And then I would say, how big of a problem is this? Is this $1 million problem I'm going to solve? Is this a $300,000 problem I'm going to solve? And then I said, if I invest this money, how quickly can I solve that problem? And how much money am I going to unlock? And so in the case of a salary, for example, as I found my now right-hand man, Eugene Parisi, who's my CFO, I couldn't afford him at the time. Except I said to myself, if I bring in, I can't keep hiring these bookkeepers. They don't know what they're doing. I'm losing so much money. I had a bookkeeper who sent a $26,000 check twice. So I said, if this guy is half better than these people, I can afford to pay twice as much as I'm paying the bookkeeper, but he's probably going to save me like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Turns out he saved me $1 million in the first year. Wow. And so that moment in my career, I think that also was around 2014, 2015, is when I really got the confidence to go out there and say, I'm not spending money, I'm investing in my business. And every single time that I've invested, not every investment has worked out, by the way, but when I frame it that way, that making these investments is unlocking value, it's like making a sale on the sales floor. It's the most addicting thing in the world. You're like, where else can I invest? I want to invest more. And that's one of the reasons why I get so excited about these kind of conversations and sharing this. I'm a big martial artist and I've been doing jujitsu for 13 years, and we say each one teach one. It's not anything unless you pass it on to someone else.
Love it. And following the data to see if it's working. So I want to kick it over. We got a couple of minutes left. I do want to grab some of the questions that we've received here in the panel. The first one was from Lisa. So we were talking about Omnichannel, and she was asking about folks that are possibly in a resort town, which was what her situation is. And we mentioned bringing digital strategies into the store to help get that customer information. So one of the big things that I've actually put in a couple of the webinars that we've done in the past is putting tools in place to acquire that customer information, especially in resort towns, because third-party data, which is something, like tracking pixels on your website, those are going to start to go away. Email open rates, Apple's already starting to block some of that third-party data. So how can you get that first-party data? And it really starts by presenting the content to them in store. It could be something as simple as a QR code at the cash wrap that just says, maybe you offer them a markdown, 10%, click this QR code, anything to get their information, even if it's a digital display, like an iPad in the store, whatever you can do, it's something that you put in the bag afterwards when they buy from the store, anything you can do to get that first party data, that's going to go a long way, especially in a seasonal resort town like that. This one is actually for Daniel. So Daniel, Andrew is asking, does Runit integrate with Shopify?
Yes.
Love it. Quick answer. Another one actually.
In a very advanced way. So it's one of the more advanced integrations out there, giving you a lot of surgical control. And we could certainly talk offline, Andrew, if you would like.
Excellent. Another one for Daniel. You mentioned a Google shopping feed, which I completely agree with. One of the questions we got here is, how do you even connect to a Google shopping feed? That might be another offline answer, but
Yeah, and yeah, I won't go into, yes, there are a number of means and companies that can help you do that. But certainly part of the Runit e-commerce integration capabilities is we actually push inventory by location every minute to Shopify and the other e-commerce platforms. And so that same capability is we're able to push inventory by location, by barcode to Google, so that when to the next question, Nico, I see someone is saying, but I'm not going to come up ahead of Amazon or a department store, which is not true. It's not true.
Not true.
Because if we push it by location, which we can do by address, by your address, then when someone's doing a Google search, if you have that pair of shoes and you are 1 minute from them, and Bloomingdale's is 15 minutes from them, you're going to come up ahead of Bloomingdale's as long as we're pushing it correctly, which we are able to do.
The other thing is keywords too. If you're looking for a specific branded item like a Nike shoe, for example, yes, it's a little more difficult, but as Daniel said, if you're pushing it correctly, it will show up. Other more long-winded keywords that you're searching for, like I need a cocktail dress for a wedding. Very vague terms like that, you actually can show up ahead of Amazon and the big box stores if those keywords are listed correctly on your website and you're pushing your Google business profile as well on your website. You can show up on maps ahead of somebody like an Amazon or a Bloomingdale's. Let's see the next one here. I'm not going in order because some of these are definitely offline.
There's a really good question about, I think, about return policies that we haven't really covered. I think that would be a good one to ask Jordan about, maybe. I mean, maybe Adam, but Jordan, it's a really good question from the independent merchant community.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of chatter about this too. So the question from Robert is, does a small retailer need to have return policies that rival Amazon and Zappos?
Absolutely not. I think we look at our return strategy as another omni-channel strategy. We look at it as an incredible opportunity to service the customer and have them buy something online and get them into the store. And so when a customer creates a transaction online and then walks that item into your store, you're met with an incredible opportunity to turn them in from a $100 customer, as I said, over their lifetime into a $2,000 customer on average over their lifetime. So I try to reframe this. This is a huge pivot in the mindset that we have to do with our entire store team of how to intake this customer and turn it into a lead. In terms of, do you have to compete with Amazon? Amazon's return policy stinks. It's not great. I think Zappos is known for having a better return policy, but this is changing across a lot of the e-commerce companies. They are starting to get real. I think as the economy tightens right now, you're going to start to see a lot of these return policies change. And you can craft a return policy that works for your customers. We do store credit. And if a customer puts up a big stink, what we tell the store associate is just give them the cash. You know, if they really, really want the cash back and they're going to push hard on us, we always try to tell them, it's like Apple has a similar kind of policy, delight them with service.
Love it. One from Shayna here. So she's saying, if you're a small store that buys one size run of select items, what's the best online marketing or e-com strategy? Because she's very apprehensive to post items online because they sell them in store that day or the next day. So what online strategy could she use to drive in that foot traffic?
I would jump in here. Going back to what I was saying earlier, I think that your focus for an online strategy should be database building, reaching out to these customers via email and SMS that will show these new products without the ability to purchase if that's a concern. and or having some sort of splash page that doesn't do e-commerce, but that you can update, or we can help update, or somebody can help you update by showing you what you have going on, right? Like that stat that was said earlier about 87% of people are looking online before they come into a store. It's important to embrace that. And again, it doesn't mean having to go all the way to the end zone, having the full-blown e-commerce experience. Although based on what Jordan's saying, take the risk and probably will pay off over time. That being said, you know, doing something and reaching out is much more important than doing nothing at all.
I'll also just add, I'll add something to that. And this is where, when I said before, you know, the advanced integration with Shopify, Salesforce, etc. The reason I use the word advanced is that we can help you gain a lot more control so that it's not an all or nothing proposition. In terms of if you are, you know, in a simple e-commerce integration, you basically get to decide, do I want to show everything online or not? And you may say, I don't want to. And so I'm not going to show anything. What we've done in the last couple of years, from a lot of requests from especially our larger national merchants who have a lot of stores they're fulfilling from, is to implement what we refer to as buffers. Some people call them filters, which is where you can decide very surgically, you know, I want to show this item in this store online, but I don't want to show that same item in another store as being available. Because in one of the stores, it's very hot. We've got people coming in. I don't want to run out. Another store, maybe I'm deeper there, or maybe it's not quite the same situation. So we've developed a lot of levers and switches, so to speak, that allow you to control that and really decide what you're going to show on your website and what you're not going to show on your website, so that you don't feel as if you're flat-footed and you don't have control over this.
Awesome. Well, we are a little bit over time, so I want to be mindful of not only our panelists here, but the attendees in the audience as well. There was one more question for Jordan. I'm going to push that to you offline if you don't mind, Jordan, because it could be a much longer answer. It's about essentially the steps that you took to go from your initial website to the next level of selling. So I'm going to push that to you offline. But I want to thank all of our panelists here for donating their time and their insights to us for what I think was definitely a timely topic for independent retailers all around. And I look forward to our next session with all of you as well. And I did put in chat here, Dane, you mentioned the retail tools. So we actually do have all of the free tools that Dane mentioned right there in the chat function. The break even is a huge one. I mean, breaking down your business into the expenses going out and the revenue coming in, and what are the small levers I can pull and push to just squeeze a little more cash out and invest in some of the new tools that we're talking about. So I definitely urge everyone to go check that out. And thank you so much to Daniel for helping us produce this event. We absolutely look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nico.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.